The following program is paid for by Lifespan Wealth Management, providing financial advice since 1993. At Lifespan Wealth Management, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. Lifespan Wealth Management has offices in Macon and Warner Robins for your convenience, and you can learn more about them by visiting their website at retirerelax.com. While you're on the site, visit the special reports section, which provides great financial education information on many different topics. You can also sign up to receive their digital feeds, which are short videos providing great information relevant to retirement, investing, and matters that affect your money. They also offer seminars to the community at no cost. If you're looking for a guest speaker for your church or civic organization, give them a call to discuss the topics you would like them to cover. Again, their contact number is 478-922-8100. Now, from the Macon studio of News Talk 940 WMAC, it's time for Your Money with Sherry Goss, Randy Goss, Jonathan Eisner, and Corey Albrecht.
Good morning, Middle Georgia. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Good morning.
Awesome.
Great to be here.
So here's a really cool story. Houston County is on the right track, and it's an article from the Georgia Trend magazine. If you're looking for a place in Georgia, and I'm just reading from the article, powered by innovation, manufacturing, and educational opportunities, you might want to check out the middle of the state. With a robust economy bolstered by a high diversified and trained workforce, thousands of jobs at Robins Air Force Base alone, and an unwavering commitment to its future, Houston County is undeniably a frontrunner. Warner Robins is being recognized by Global Location Strategies as the top metropolitan statistical area for food manufacturing in the nation. This reflects years of intentional collaboration across our economic development, workforce, education, and industry partners. It represents a sustained commitment to building a talent pipeline, strengthening infrastructure, and creating an environment where companies can grow for the long term.
Yep. That partnership led to Jack Link's $450 million production facility in Perry that opened in June of 2025, generating at least 500 new jobs for the area and nearby Frito-Lay, with its $200 million expansion in 2020 that added 120 jobs. For John Hermeyer, a Jack Link executive VP, he says the leadership behind Houston County was a clear standout when choosing a location for the new facility. Officials are constantly innovating, moving Houston County forward with the implementation of new solutions to further economic growth and promote sustainability. Houston County is home to one of the fastest growing populations in the state, with a growth of 27.3% since 2010. With jobs available to meet increasing demand and population of people aged 25 to 64, making up 51.6% of the total residents. And quality job training remains a top priority for county leaders.
Georgia has been ranked as the top state for business for 12 consecutive years by Area Development Magazine, and Houston County is doing its part to contribute by participating in the Georgia Certified Work Ready Communities Initiative. Georgia Central Technical College also connects skill building with job opportunities. In 2025, the school's Economic Development Division provided 282 companies with nearly 6.8 million hours of training. It's impossible to highlight Houston County without acknowledging the powerhouse that is Robins Air Force Base. Located in Warner Robins, Robins Air Force Base is massive in both physical size and impact as the state's largest single-site industrial complex. It is also the largest employer in Houston County with 24,500 workers.
The Middle Georgia Innovation Corridor is a regional initiative between 11 counties in Middle Georgia area that connects industry, research institutions, educational providers, and workforce and local communities, all centered around the strategic presence in Robins. Project Synergy at the Wayne Low Synergy Innovation Complex, launched in 2021, is a collaborative effort between regional partners and Robins Air Force Base. It provides nearly 43,000 square feet for classrooms, training spaces, software development environments, and a 9,000 square foot secure lab space. It was designed as a direct pathway for careers in software engineering with dual enrollment classes offered through the Houston County School District and Middle Georgia State University, as well as paid college internships. In 2025, 85% of its students who completed four-year internships were offered full-time positions, often with organizations like Robins Air Force Base or its contractors.
The Houston STEM and Career Academy, a groundbreaking regional innovation hub made possible by the collaborative work and support between state and local entities, will welcome its first students in August of 2027. With pathway to careers in fields such as engineering, cybersecurity, and healthcare, participating students can continue classes at their high school while attending the academy for part of the day. The academy, located in Warner Robins, is the latest resource contributing to the school district's success. Last year, Houston County School District exceeded the state's graduation rate by 6.1%, graduating 93.3% of its students. As the second largest aviation museum in the country, the Museum of Aviation in Warner Robins is helping light the way for STEM students in the region. Additions like the GEAR, Georgia Engineering, AI, and Robotics Lab, and the Robins Spark Hub will strengthen the museum's commitment to its role in education, innovation, and regional economic and community vitality. With construction beginning in October of 2025, the GEAR Lab is on track for its late spring 26 opening. The article talks about Warner Robins revitalizing its downtown commercial circle, which is a huge project, and Houston Healthcare partnering with Emory, which helped expand patient services. If you'd like to read this entire article, go to georgiatrend.com and search for On the Right Track. That's the title of the article. It is pretty fantastic.
I had the opportunity earlier this week to attend a gathering with the mayor of Warner Robins where she talked about how the city is buying up land for the commercial circle downtown so that they can have a say in how it's going to be developed. Everything from what kind of business they will let open downtown to how the buildings will look so that it looks like the development was intentional instead of thrown together. She also talked about the healthcare events that the city of Warner Robins is offering and provided a list of free activities that businesses throughout the city are offering to the community. The next one is Youth Boxing, June 23rd at 6:30 at Kingdom Boxing. You can find the list of activities at www.wrga.gov/page/mayors-health-initiative. The mayor urged everyone at the meeting to try and get to at least one of the activities. Depending on the activity, they take place all throughout the day and usually lasting a couple of hours each.
You know,
It's amazing.
Jumping backwards to what you're talking about commercial circle, that has been an ongoing problem in Warner Robins since we moved down here.
Oh, yeah.
And those buildings down there were just dilapidated when we got here in 2002. So it's really nice to see that someone's finally got an initiative going that's going to make that
I agree.
look really good.
Revitalize that area.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's what this
Yeah,
place
when
needed.
Randy took the job down here, and so the kids and I came down so we could see this place because we were going to start living here. And he took us to the barbecue place across from the base, and everybody was either camo or hunting gear.
Right.
And we're just sitting there looking around at everybody. And then we drove around a little bit, and that commercial circle was like, you got to be, this is downtown.
Right.
This is seriously?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's about time.
Yep, it's good for her. All right, let's talk about Trump and tariffs. When President Trump announced his plans for a new tariff regime, he said the action was, quote, primarily to pay down debt, which will happen in a very large quantity, end quote. But fast forward a little under a year, and revenues generated by customs duties aren't enough to make a dent in the interest payments on national debt, let alone the headline figure. As of June 2026, the U.S. national debt stands at $39.2 trillion, according to the U.S. Treasury data. That figure is growing by an eye-watering sum. The first 8 months of fiscal year 2026, the Congressional Budget Office reports the federal budget deficits have totaled $1.2 trillion. In its monthly budget review published last week, the CBO also broke down the government's incoming versus outgoing money. For the first 8 months of the fiscal year, the government raked in $3.6 trillion, but spent $4.9 trillion. Income rose quicker than spending, according to the CBO, with revenues increasing by $174 billion, while spending crept up only $57 billion.
However, income would need to rise significantly to have any impact on the value of interest payments the Treasury is paying to maintain debt levels. The CBO reported that between October and May 2026, the government has spent $742 billion servicing the debt burden, an increase on the $674 billion spent in the same period last year. Comparing these interest payments to income, the CBO reports that so far this fiscal year, tariffs have generated $189 billion, a little over a quarter of the payments required merely to service the debt. That said, the tariff regime suffered some setbacks, which means revenues may have come in under initial expectations. In February of this year, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against a tranche of tariffs the White House had rolled out in 2025 under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The government was ordered to pay them back some $129 billion with a B.
The figures did demonstrate that before the ruling, tariffs were having a meaningful impact on the bottom line. The CBO reported that customs duties in fiscal year 2026 so far had more than doubled compared to the same period in 2025, rising by $107 billion. This increase occurred through April, the CBO said, and was a direct result of executive action. However, net collections on tariffs declined sharply in May when tariff refunds began to be paid out. Given that the White House moved to reintroduce tariffs on new legal grounds in the immediate aftermath, the significant revenues generated by the policy may appear in future data.
The president also indicated a new perspective on national debt. Previously, the White House had talked about paying down the debt and using tariffs or visa revenues to do so. In a recent interview with Fortune, Trump also shared an alternate view that the national debt is really not so bad if you see through the lens of a real estate Mongol. The debt versus the total value of America and its natural assets, such as the Grand Canyon or surrounding oceans. If you put down the value of these things, it's like hundreds of trillions of dollars, Trump says. And by that measure, if you kept the national debt at $40 trillion, you're way under-levered.
Debt hawks are continuing to push for fiscal responsibility. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget is urging lawmakers to keep deficit reduction in mind as discussions over advancing a third budget reconciliation bill in Congress progresses. The committee is calling for savings of at least $600 billion, adding the last two reconciliation bills are projected to add nearly $5 trillion to the debt through 2035. The upcoming budget resolution should instead facilitate the passage of legislation to reduce deficits, as reconciliation is intended to do. On a personal note, I hate debt, regardless of assets. It's an expense and money that could be used, the money, the payments we're having to pay could be used for bigger and better purposes, and that's just my opinion.
I agree with you, Sherry, and it's unfortunate that we see too many from government on all the way down that want to continue spending on new programs, even to known fraudulent actors, regardless of what it means to our country and our financial security. I mean, passing this debt down to our children and grandchildren is just criminal, in my opinion.
Right.
All right. Let's shift gears and talk about your online data sets and how it affects your prices. Here's how a surveillance pricing works and why states are split on it. Let's say you leave a few things in your online cart and go to bed. Say the hoodie or the running shoes or the cast iron pan you keep meaning to buy. Overnight, a system somewhere notices the hesitation, clocks where you live and what you browsed on the way in, and decides decides that the shopper like you will probably pay a little bit more. By morning, the price is nudged up. You never see the lever being pulled. That is no longer a privacy world thought experiment. In 2025, the Federal Trade Commission's finding of a study into that what is called surveillance pricing, and the detail that stuck was vivid. Staff found that the behavior, ranging from mouse movements on a web page to the type of products that a consumer leave unpurchased in an online shopping cart, can be tracked and fed into the price that you are shown. The cursor that lingers, the cart that is left overnight, and those actions are just grist for the mill.
Two cautions before we go further, because the framing fight matters. The findings are preliminary, a staff perspective rather than a finished report, and they went out over the objection of two commissioners. And surveillance pricing is a term coined by critics. The industry prefers personalized pricing. Keep both in mind. What follows is less about whether you are being overcharged and more about who exactly is deciding your number. For years, that was a hunch with no paper trail. What changed is the tool the FTC reached for. Under Section 6B of the FTC Act, the agency can compel firms to hand over documents whether they like it or not, and in July of 2024, it sent orders to 8 companies. 6 of them returned the material the study rests on: MasterCard, Accenture, the pricing software vendors Pros, Bloomreach, and Revionics, and the consultancy McKinsey & Company. These are not household names, and that's precisely the point. The agency went past the shops you recognize and knocked on the doors of the firms that build the machinery behind them.
The agency was careful to anonymize the data to protect trade secrets, so the published examples are hypothetical illustrations rather than named cases. Even so, the record now exists in black and white, which is different from a privacy campaigner's warning. A worry has become a document with a federal seal on it. So what moves your number? In plain terms, the idea is to estimate the most you would likely pay and edge the price toward it. The inputs of the study describes are the kind of thing most of us hand over without a second thought. Your precise location, the sites you have browsed, what you've bought before, demographic details, and the small behavioral tells like a hovering cursor or an abandoned basket. Feed enough of that in, and the identically same product can carry a different price depending on who is looking for it.
Yep. And here's the honest part, and any fair account must make room for it. Charging different people different prices is not automatically a swindle, and it's not always bad for you. The same engine that nudges one shopper up can hand another a discount to close a wavering sale. Cinemas have charged less at matinees for a century. The trouble isn't that prices vary. It isn't this version happens in the dark. Wait a minute. Let me back up and say that again. It is that this version happens in the dark, key to a personal profile you cannot see and you did not know you had handed over. Opacity rather than variation is the thing that regulators can actually get their teeth into.
The middlemen who really set the price is where the story stops being a consumer gripe and becomes a question about how a whole market is wired. The FTC's study trains into lens on the intermediary firms, the middleman a retailer hires to tweak and target prices on its behalf. A shop does not need to build any of this in-house. It buys the capability off the shelf, plugs it in, and lets the software decide what to show whom.
That relationship creates a gap between the company you're buying from and the company choosing your price, and the gap is the whole game. A retailer can say, with more or less a straight face, that it does not really control the number because a vendor's model does. The vendors can say it merely supplies a tool and the retailer sets the rules. Responsibility falls neatly between the two parties. For a business reader, that is the structural insight worth holding on to. The pricing decision has been quietly outsourced to a layer almost nobody outside the trade can actually see, and accountability has gone with it.
So what does it cost you at the checkout? A December 2025 investigation put a number on it. Groundwork Collaborative, working with the Consumer Reports and A More Perfect Union, ran a field test with roughly 400 shoppers buying the same basket at the same time and found that nearly 75% of grocery items on an Instacart were offered at more than one price. For identical goods at the same store, prices vary by as much as 23% between shoppers.
I find that staggering.
It is. Annualizing the additional cost, the group estimated the gap could cost as much for a single household of up to $1,200. Worth noting is that this came from advocacy-aligned research, not a neutral referee. And Consumer Reports itself noted that the practice it caught does not quite meet the strict definition of surveillance pricing.
The reaction was swift. Within days, Instacart said it would end the item price experiments that produced these gaps, though it kept the door open to tests tied to discounts and promotions. With Washington not taking action, the states have gone their own ways, and they have not gone the same way. New York moved first on disclosure. Its Algorithmic Pricing Disclosure Act took effect November of 2025, and where it applies, it forces a blunt label. This price was set by an algorithm using your personal data. The law survived a First Amendment challenge, carries penalties of up to $1,000 per violation, and Attorney General Letitia James has told New Yorkers to report shops that skip the notice.
Randy, if this stuff doesn't meet the definition of surveillance pricing, I don't know what would. I mean, they're watching every move. If you put it in your cart and leave it overnight, they're watching that, and that's not considered surveillance pricing, then what is?
Right?
Exactly.
So California took a different approach. In January of this year, Data Privacy Day, Attorney General Rob Bontas opened an investigative sweep, sending letters to retail, grocery, and hotel firms and arguing that the practice may already break the state's existing privacy law. A separate bill would ban surveillance pricing by retailers outright, with civil penalties of up to $12,500 per violation, and treble that for intentional breaches. It is moving, but not settled. Maryland, Colorado, and Connecticut have each passed laws of their own, and more than a dozen other states are weighing bills. Congress has stirred too. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee opened its own inquiry, requesting records from Booking.com, Expedia, Instacart, Lyft, and Uber.
Yeah, and the oddest twist is that the regulator who gathered the proof has largely walked away from it. So this is a story. This is really two stories at once, and a tidy crackdown headline misses half of it. The federal enforcement has effectively stood down, while state enforcements have fired up unevenly. The result is a map of where the same retailer behavior is required to be disclosed in Albany, under formal investigations in Sacramento, and untouched a state line away. While this research is far beyond retailers, if your company sits anywhere in the data chain, the California theory is the one to watch because it does not lean on the brand new statute. What's that word?
I think Bonta, the guy.
Bonta's arguments rest on the purpose limitation in the state's privacy law, the principle that the data gathered for one reason cannot be quietly repurposed for another. The shopper would never expect. Hand over your address to get the delivery, and using it to decide your price is a different job from the one you agreed to.
That logic does not stop at the cash register. It reaches the data brokers and pricing vendors up the supply chain, not just the shop at the end of it. A firm that sells the signals can be as exposed as the firm that acts on them.
Here's the bottom line. The single fair price, the same number on the shelf for everyone, was always more custom than law, and it is fraying. You can protect yourself a little. Compare the same item across a logged out browser or a different device. Watch whether a price climbs after you've searched for something twice. And in New York, look for the disclosure label that now has to be there. The deeper question is the one the FTC's paper trail forces into the open. When the price you pay is set by a vendor your retailer hired, working from data you never knew you gave, who is actually making the decision and who answers for it?
And something that I saw when I was trying to sell my car is every time that I put into Kelley Blue Book to get a quote for it, it always went down by like $10, $15.
Really?
What?
So every time that I put the VIN in for that specific car, that just trickled down and down every time I searched what it was valued at.
And you would do it like immediately after you had just searched
Like every couple, like 4 or 5 days in between.
Oh, well, I wonder if, did you update the mileage when
Getting
you
older.
Yeah, it's worth less than $15 less.
Every 4 days it went down $10. I would not have had much of a car left to trade in.
True.
Oh my
It's worth
gosh.
zero now.
Yeah, but the miles didn't change. Just put the VIN in, and every time I searched it, just inched down slightly.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's weird.
4 days older. That's why.
Oh
All
my
right.
gosh.
So here, this is about the decision to downsize. Randy and Sherry, you guys can probably relate to this.
Oh, we do.
This article.
I don't know that we've really downsized.
Right.
That's true. That's true. But you do get rid of a lot of junk.
Oh, we got rid of a lot
Including
of
your
stuff.
lunch.
And people's leftover lunch at the office. All right, so let's set the stage here by telling you a story. Tom and Linda have lived in their 4-bedroom home for nearly 30 years. It was the house where they raised their children, hosted holidays, and watched life change one season at a time. But now, in their late 60s, the same house that once felt full of energy had started to feel like maintenance. The yard still needs mowing, the gutters still need cleaning, rooms sit unused, yet still have to be heated, cooled, and cleaned. Every small repair feels less like routine upkeep and more like another reminder that the house was built for a different stage of their life. One evening, after another weekend spent dealing with a leaking water heater and a broken garage door spring, Tom said what they had both been thinking. Maybe it's time to think smaller. Linda did not respond right away. Downsizing wasn't just a financial decision, it was emotional. Every wall held a memory, but she also knew something had shifted. The house no longer served them the way it once had.
I have so many clients who are going through this exact thing. It is very tough.
I can imagine
is
it
tough.
is.
The next few months were harder than they expected. Downsizing sounds simple on paper, selling one home, buy another, but in reality, it meant sorting through decades of life. Every closet became a conversation. Do we keep this? Turned into, when was the last time we even used this? Their children came home for a weekend to help, but even then, progress was slow. Sentimental items slowed everything down more. There were disagreements too. Tom wanted to keep things practical and move quickly. Linda wanted to preserve pieces of their history. At times, it felt even overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine. But there were surprises along the way too. Selling the larger home meant unlocking equity they hadn't touched in years. Their utility bills dropped in ways they had not expected. And the idea of no longer spending weekends on constant repairs slowly started to feel like a relief instead of a loss. Still, there were hard moments. The final walkthrough of the empty house was quiet in ways neither one of them had prepared for. 6 months later, Tom and Linda sat on the patio of their new home, a smaller, single-level place just outside of town. It wasn't as large, but it was easier. Cleaner lines, less upkeep, and the layout that actually matched how they lived. Mornings felt different. Instead of mowing the grass or fixing something broken, they drank coffee outside and they planned their day. They found themselves going out more, traveling more, and spending less time managing the house and more time enjoying life.
Sounds great. Of course, there were things that they missed. The old house had space for everyone during holiday get-togethers. It held memories that they could not recreate. And at times, silence in the new home felt very unfamiliar. But overall, the trade-off made sense. Less stress, lower expenses, more freedom. One day, they suddenly realized they didn't lose their house. We just stopped letting the house run our lives. They had adopted a simpler style of living. Tom and Linda's story is one many families eventually face. A home that once made financial sense during peak earning years can become less efficient in retirement. What was once an asset tied to family life can slowly turn into a source of rising fixed costs: property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, repairs, etc. From a financial standpoint, downsizing often does three things at once. First, it can unlock home equity that has built up over decades, turning an illiquid asset into usable cash flow or investment capital. Second, it reduces ongoing monthly expenses, which can ease pressure on retirement income. And third, it can simplify budgeting by converting unpredictable maintenance costs into more stable housing expenses.
But the decision is not purely mathematical. Timing matters. Selling too early may reduce long-term enjoyment of the home, while waiting too long can mean higher upkeep costs or a rushed decision during a health or mobility change. Ultimately, downsizing is less about square footage and more about aligning housing with how life is actually lived today, not how it was lived 20 or 30 years ago. I have a lot of clients who are dealing with this, and it's hard. When Randy and I downsized years ago, we had to let go of a lot of stuff. The craziest thing was the boxes of photo albums that we had been carrying with us all over the world for years while he was in the military. We decided to clean them out. I mean, they were two giant boxes full of these albums. We decided to clean them out and ask the kids if they wanted any of the photos of their first time standing, first time riding a bike, etc. They didn't want any of them. So we picked what we wanted to keep, and the rest went into the trash can. That seems crazy.
But, these were back in the day when you had wet film and, negatives. And so you took a lot of pictures just so you
could capture
ones.
everything.
You could make sure you got a good one. It's not like the digital ones where you can auto retouch and things like that, and just delete the ones you don't want.
Sure.
So you ended up with a lot of leftovers. So
I really think one of the problems this is creating is, have you seen the number of storage buildings that are being built everywhere?
Yeah, we talked about that on this show.
Insane. And I think it's because people can't let go of stuff, and so they have to put it in storage. We have friends that have done this, and they're paying the monthly fee, and nobody wants the stuff. So just give it to Goodwill. I mean, let it go. Set it free. I mean, if nobody wants it, let somebody else
or
have
throw it in the trash like you guys did.
Right. With your lunch.
Correct. Backstory there, Monday of this week. I ate half of my lunch. I was proud of myself. I had stayed disciplined. I was going to eat the other half for dinner. And when I went in the afternoon, when I was leaving the office to go get it, it was gone. And it turns out that Sherry had thrown it away because she can't stand for things to sit in the refrigerator too long. No, I'm kidding. She thought it was somebody else's. And
somebody else told me it was theirs.
It was
and
theirs.
They didn't want it.
She tossed it out. So I went without dinner that night. I'm fine. I made it. I'm here. But
you could live off the land for the day.
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
You've been listening to Your Money, brought to you by Lifespan Wealth Management, proudly serving Middle Georgia for over 30 years. Our mission? Helping folks just like you plan for a secure and stress-free retirement. Need a trusted financial advisor? Call us today at 478-922-8100 and schedule your complimentary consultation at our Macon or Warner Robins office. Want to learn more? Visit us anytime at retirerelax.com. Because when you plan smart, you can retire and relax. And here's something extra. We offer free educational seminars for the community. If your group needs a guest speaker, give us a call and let's make it happen. That's 478-922-8100. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right. Let's talk about a home equity line of credit, or a HELOC. And it's one of those financial tools that sounds simple on the surface, but it can behave very differently depending on how it is used. At its core, a HELOC is a revolving line of credit secured by your home. Think of it like a credit card backed by your house. The bank gives you access to a set limit based on your home's equity, often up to 70 to 90% combined loan to value, depending on the lender. During the draw period, usually 5 to 10 years, you can borrow, repay, and borrow again. After that, you enter the repayment period where the balance is amortized and must be paid back over time. For many homeowners, a HELOC feels like flexibility, but flexibility cuts both ways. Used responsibly, a HELOC can be a powerful financial tool. One of the biggest advantages is access to low-cost capital because it is secured by your home. Interest rates are often lower than credit cards or personal loans. That makes it attractive for large expenses like home renovations, debt consolidation, or even educational costs.
Another benefit is flexibility in timing. You don't have to take out the full loan up front. Instead, you draw only what you need when you need it. For example, a homeowner remodeling a kitchen might pull $10,000 at a time instead of borrowing a lump sum and paying interest on money sitting idle.
There's also a strategic angle. Some homeowners use HELOCs as a short-term bridge, covering cash flow gaps, funding investments, or smoothing irregular income. In some financial plans, it can act as a liquidity buffer, so retirees or business owners don't have to sell investments during a down market. When used carefully and temporarily, a HELOC can improve financial efficiency. But the same flexibility that makes HELOCs attractive is also what makes them dangerous. The first risk is variable interest rates. Most HELOCs are tied to the prime rate. When interest rates rise, your payment can increase significantly. What started as an affordable line of credit can quickly become a heavy monthly obligation.
The second risk is overuse of home equity. Because a HELOC feels like available cash, it can blur the lines between good and unnecessary spending. Small draws for convenience can quietly turn into a large balance over time, especially if the borrower only makes interest payments during the draw period. The third and most serious risk is treating home equity like income instead of debt. Unlike a credit card, this debt is tied to your home. If circumstances change, job loss, reduced retirement income, or declining home values, you still owe the balance.
Yep. And in extreme cases, that can increase financial stress on the very asset meant to provide stability, your home. Where HELOC often becomes problematic is not in theory, but in behavior over time. A common pattern looks like this. A homeowner opens up a HELOC for a specific purpose, say $20,000 in renovations. The project's finished, but the line remains open. Then another expense appears, maybe a car repair, a medical bill, maybe lifestyle spending that feels justified because the equity is there. Over several years, the balance grows quietly. During the draw period, payments may look manageable because they are interest only, but that can create a false sense of security. Then comes the transition to repayment. Suddenly, the borrower is required to pay down the principal on top of the interest, and what once felt flexible becomes a fixed obligation. And this is where many households feel the shock, not from the loan itself, but from the change in its structure.
There's also a broader risk tied to the housing market. A HELOC is secured by your home's value. If home prices decline, your equity shrinks. In some cases, lenders can freeze or reduce HELOC limits if the collateral value drops significantly. That means a borrower who counted on that line of credit for flexibility may suddenly find it unavailable. This is especially important in cycles where home values rise quickly. People can become house rich on paper and begin using that equity aggressively without considering that values don't always move only up. Unlike other forms of debt, a HELOC is directly tied to a single asset, that being your home, which makes it uniquely sensitive to real estate conditions.
Despite the risks, a HELOC is not inherently good or bad. It is a tool. The outcome depends on structure and discipline. Used well, it should have a clear purpose, a defined project, a payment plan, or a short-term liquidity strategy. It should not be used as a permanent extension of income. Financially healthy usages often include borrowing for appreciating or value-enhancing uses like home improvements, maintaining a conservative loan-to-value ratio, having a plan to repay principal, not just interest, and avoiding reliance on it for recurring monthly expenses. In other words, it works best when it's treated as a temporary capital, not permanent spending power. At its core, a HELOC reflects a large financial reality. Home equity is not income, it is stored value. It can be accessed, and sometimes it should be. It can solve problems, create opportunities, and improve flexibility when used strategically, but it also carries risk when it replaces planning with availability. The difference between a helpful HELOC and a harmful one usually comes down to one question. Is this borrowing tied to a plan or just tied to what's available? And in personal finance, that distinction often makes all the differences.
Absolutely.
I had a client call me just a couple of weeks ago because they got such a good deal on their HELOC. He was asking me about keeping it, and the interest rate was unbelievably low. And so he's keeping it just because he can, and it's not costing him anything not to not borrow from it. But he's like, in an emergency, this is the cheapest place that I could borrow from, period.
That's a good place to be in.
I was shocked to hear that. So they must be offering some kind of a deal to attract people to that bank. Anyways, looking back, next article, looking back at retirement reality. When people imagine retirement, they often picture freedom, more time, fewer responsibilities, and the ability to finally enjoy the results of decades of work. But when you actually sit down with retirees and ask a different question, what do you wish you had done differently financially? The answer tends to follow a familiar pattern.
The biggest financial regrets in retirement are rarely about a single bad investment. More often, they are about timing, preparation, and decisions that seem small, but at the time became much larger in hindsight. Not saving enough or starting to save early enough is the first one. The most common regret is simple: not saving enough during the peak earning years. Many retirees say that they assume they had plenty of time. Retirement contributions were inconsistent, or they prioritized other goals: homes, cars, children expenses, lifestyle upgrades over long-term investing. The challenge is that retirement savings are heavily dependent on compounding. The earlier dollars are invested, the more time they have to grow. When people delay savings until their 40s or 50s, they often have to contribute significantly more to catch up. And not everyone has the income flexibility to do that. And before we go on, I will say that we've seen it when people call here and say, hey, and they give their age and they're later in life and they're looking to make a risky investment.
Oh,
And because they're trying to,
Because they feel like they
Make
need to
up
catch
for
they
up.
got to
time.
catch up.
Yeah.
And it's very apparent what's going on. So
Yeah. Looking back, many retirees don't regret what they spent money on. They regret what they didn't set aside when it would have been easier. The second thing is underestimating healthcare costs. Another major regret is underestimating healthcare expenses in retirement. While Medicare covers a portion of healthcare costs starting at 65, it does not cover everything. Premiums, deductibles, prescription drugs, dental care, vision, and long-term care can add up significantly over time. Many retirees are surprised by how much of their monthly budget goes toward healthcare-related spending, especially in later years when medical needs tend to increase.
What feels like a stable retirement income on paper can feel very different once these expenses are factored in. Retirees often say they wish they had planned more specifically for healthcare rather than treating it as a general assumption. The third issue is claiming Social Security too early. One of the most emotional regrets involves Social Security timing. Many retirees claim benefits at age 62 because they want income right away or unsure about the future. But claiming early reduces the monthly benefit permanently compared to waiting until full retirement age or even age 70. Years later, some retirees realize they locked in a lower income stream for the rest of their life, especially as they live longer than expected.
next, the regret here is often not about needing the money at 62, but about not fully understanding the long-term trade-off of starting benefits early versus delaying them. Number 4, being too conservative or too aggressive. Investment decisions also become a major reflection point in retirement. Some retirees were too conservative, moving heavily into cash or low-yield investments too early. Over time, inflation quietly erodes their purchasing power, and their portfolio doesn't grow enough to sustain long retirements. Others were too aggressive, staying heavily exposed to market risk without adjusting as retirement approached. When market downturns occurred early in retirement, withdrawals combined with losses caused lasting damage to their portfolios, and I've seen both sides of this. If you are getting ready to retire and are not managing your investment accounts, give us a call and come see one of us for advice. There is no charge for the appointment, and we can explain the models we use to manage money for our retired and retiring clients. So give us a call at 478-922-8100.
Yep. And the regret is not just about returns. It's about not aligning the risk with life stage. And number 5, a surprising number of retirees say they never had a true income plan. They had savings, but not a structured strategy for turning those savings into a predictable monthly income. Without that structure, retirement spending can feel uncertain. Some months feel comfortable, while others create anxiety about whether withdrawals are too high or too low. Retirees often say they wish they had built a clearer system, understanding which accounts to draw from, in what order, and how taxes would be affected. If you must choose a strict order, standard financial planning typically recommends drawing from accounts in the following sequence to maximize and compound growth. You first take money from the taxable accounts. That's your brokerage accounts, savings, and CDs. Then tax-deferred accounts, traditional IRAs and traditional 404ks. Roth accounts, that's
401ks.
401ks. I'm not sure why that was there. For a Roth accounts last, and allowing tax-free growth for those accounts. But we don't have to take. Hang on.
You was just saying you have to take your tax bracket into consideration when you're withdrawing in this order.
Thank you.
If we're going to look at the most optimal tax in terms of taxes.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would suggest that the order that you take it in depends on a lot of factors. Because if you inherited money from a relative and you fall into the 10-year rule and you've got to start taking that out, period, that can throw you into another bracket.
Yeah, that's not considered in this.
You've got to look at the total picture. That's why we sit down with people and we go through things like this to figure out what is the absolute best way for you to move forward.
Right. Lack of structure doesn't always show up during the accumulation phase. It becomes more visible once the paychecks stop in retirement. Number 6 is helping family without boundaries. Another common regret involves financial support to adult children or family members, and we've talked about this at length.
A lot.
Many retirees want to help their children buy homes, pay for education, or get through financial setbacks. But without clear boundaries, some retirees later realize they gave away more than they could comfortably afford to give away. In hindsight, they don't regret helping. They regret not setting limits or balancing generosity with their own long-term security.
And I've got to make a comment here because I have a client I just met with a couple of weeks ago that have $110,000, and they decided to cash it after our appointment, and we went through everything. They're in their 80s. We don't know where they're headed. Are they going to need care, et cetera? We talked through all of that. The next day they called and they got a $100,000 distribution to give to their kids and their grandkids. And I'm like, and it was taxable. I couldn't believe it. They didn't bring that up when they were talking to me, but they decided after talking to me to just take a pile of money out and just give it away. So be careful, really think through your decisions that you make.
And this becomes especially important when retirement income is fixed and unexpected expenses arise later in life. The 7th issue is not planning for longevity. People are living longer, and that changes everything about retirement planning. One of the most overlooked regrets is not planning for a retirement that lasts 25 to 35 years or more. Many plans are built around shorter expectations. Retirees who live longer than expected sometimes face the challenge of adjusting spending later in life when there's less flexibility to recover from earlier decisions. In other words, the risk is not just running out of money, it's underestimating how long the money needs to last.
When you step back, the biggest financial regrets in retirement share a common theme. They are rarely about intelligence or effort. Most people worked hard, saved something, and tried to make reasonable decisions. The regret comes from gaps in planning, timing, or understanding how different financial decisions interact over time. Retirement success is not just about reaching a number. It's about aligning savings, income, healthcare planning, taxes, and lifestyle expectations into one coordinated plan. And perhaps the most consistent lesson from retirees is this: it is much easier to adjust decisions earlier than to correct them later. Any comment, anybody?
No, that was a good write-up. And that was just essentially, Sherry, to your point, is the conversations we have with people when they're looking for guidance. Coming in and figuring out the order that things should be liquidated or saved, depending on your stage. So give us a call. We can have these conversations with you. All right, next up, the inheritance and a sudden change. When Mark received the call, he didn't fully understand what it meant at first. His uncle had passed away, and with his passing came an inheritance that he never expected, over $380,000. At 42 years old, Mark wasn't broke, but he wasn't wealthy either. He had a steady job, a mortgage, some credit card debt, and 2 kids heading toward college in the next few years. The money felt like a door had suddenly opened, but he wasn't sure what room it led to. For the first few weeks, he didn't touch it. It just sat there in a savings account, almost unreal. He told himself he would figure it out soon. It didn't take long before ideas started forming. His wife mentioned paying off the mortgage. A friend suggested investing in real estate. Another coworker mentioned buying a rental property before rates change again. Mark even found himself looking at new trucks online, telling himself it would be a once-in-a-lifetime purchase.
The money began to feel less like a gift and more like a responsibility with no instruction manual. The problem was that Mark lacked good intention. Wasn't the fact that Mark lacked good intentions. It was that every direction sounded reasonable in the moment. Debt reduction felt safe. Investing felt smart. Spending felt like enjoying life while he could. But without a plan, every option competed equally for attention. After a few months, Mark had done very little. A small chunk went towards credit card debt while most of the money remained untouched. This is where many inheritance stories quietly stall. People assume not acting is the safe choice, but in reality, leaving large sums unplanned also carry risk, especially inflation risk, emotional spending risk, and a missed opportunity cost.
Mark felt the pressure building anyway. The longer the money sat there, the more it started to feel like it was available rather than assigned, and that shift in mindset is where mistakes often begin. One weekend, Mark and his wife got into a small argument about home improvements. The conversation escalated quickly. By Monday morning, Mark was at a home improvement store pricing out a full kitchen renovation. He didn't run the numbers. He didn't compare priorities. He just started imagining what the house could look like.
That's when he realized something uncomfortable. The inheritance was starting to make decisions for him instead of the other way around. He had moved from what should we do with this money to what can we afford to fix right now. Before making any major decisions, Mark finally did something simple but important. He scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor. That conversation changed the tone completely. Instead of talking about individual purchases, they started talking about priorities. What debt carried the highest interest rate? What emergency savings should look like? What retirement accounts were missing funding? What goals actually mattered most over the next 10 to 20 years?
The advisor didn't tell him what to buy or not to buy. Instead, the advisor helped him slow the decision-making process down enough to see the full picture. And that was the key point. Before spending an inheritance, the goal is not to act quickly, but it is to act intentionally. Over the next few weeks, Mark and his wife built a structured plan. Part of the inheritance went toward eliminating high-interest debt. Another portion was set aside for future taxes and college planning. A chunk was invested for long-term growth, and a smaller portion was intentionally allocated for lifestyle, money that they could spend without guilt or second-guessing themselves.
For the first time since receiving the inheritance, the money had categories instead of confusion. It didn't feel like pressure anymore. It felt like direction. Inheritance stories rarely fail because of bad math. They struggle because of emotional speed. Large sums of money arrive all at once, but life decisions are usually meant to be made slowly. Without structure, even smart people can drift into spending, delay, or reactive choices that don't align with the long-term goals. That's why one of the most important steps about after receiving an inheritance is not investment selection or debt payoff, it's conversation. Sitting down with a financial advisor before making major decisions doesn't remove control. It adds clarity. It creates space between emotion and action. Because once money has direction, it stops being overwhelming and starts becoming useful.
Very good article. Next up, work from home is here to stay, even if some CEOs don't love it. The past couple of years have seen a drumbeat of big companies announcing to great fanfare that they were requiring employees to spend more time in the office. Home Depot, Target, Microsoft, 3M, Intel, the list goes on and on. JP Morgan's CEO mandated everyone return to the office in early of 2025 for the full 5-day work week. But across the broader economy, the evidence suggests that the return to the office has stalled out.
An average of 26% of paid full days were worked from home in May, according to a monthly work-from-home survey run by economists. That's down, but not by much, from the 27% registered 2 years prior. It was about 30% in 2022 when companies were transitioning away from the pandemic. But in 2019, before the pandemic, Labor Department figures show that about 7% of days were worked from home. The data does seem at odds with how things went at JP Morgan Chase, where remote work is dead. Instead, remote work rates appear to have reached a new equilibrium. with far more people working from home at least part of the time than before the pandemic.
Yep. Other data tells a similar story. Castle Systems, a security company that tracks access card swipes, puts average workplace occupancy across 10 major cities just slightly higher than a year ago. Cell phone data found that office visits in May were about 32% below the May 2019 levels. In the same month last year, they were about 35% below that 2019 level. The disconnect between the high-profile return to the office mandates from some large companies and the broader data could be in part because, big as they are, those companies account for just a portion of the 163 million strong U.S. workforce.
Of course, many people can't work remotely at all. Factory workers, emergency room nurses, cooks, they all have to come in. Nearly 2/3 of workers are on site all the time, according to the Work From Home survey. Only about 1 in 10 are fully remote, with hybrid arrangements far more prevalent. Some employers are finding ways to nudge workers back into in-person work, such as promoting workers who show up more often or requiring new hires to be in office. But for others, work from home apparently works.
This could also point to the age of the CEO. Data suggests that many of the chief executives who run big companies are on the older side. The data show that employees at companies with young chief executives work from home more frequently than companies with older executives at the helm. So the question and the answer might rest in the future as older CEOs retire and younger CEOs take the helm, CEOs that are more comfortable with employees working from home some of the time.
Nor is it just younger CEOs who are more receptive to work from home. The same is true of younger companies. This matters because historically, job growth in the U.S. has been driven not by well-established companies, but by smaller startups on their way to becoming tomorrow's behemoths. These are the companies which are investing in management practices to make this model work. And some of these companies will scale up and become the next set of large companies. Another factor to take into consideration in this conversation is technology. As new technology is introduced, enabling people to efficiently work remotely continues to improve, then we might see a more sustained work-from-home workforce.
That could benefit some groups, such as women with children. DOL data shows that there has been a substantial increase in employment for people with disabilities since the pandemic, probably due to, at least in part, to the flexibility of working from home. But she also worries about some of the drawbacks that come with work from home's benefits.
Yeah, in research published in the journal Science this month, they presented evidence that remote work has made Americans lonelier and more mentally distressed. The Quarterly Journal of Economics shows that younger employees benefit from working in proximity to more senior employees, and presenting evidence that the rise of remote work might have hurt the job prospects of young college graduates. Moreover, the benefits of work from home can show up right away, at least for workers. Hours saved on commuting or the ability to run a load of laundry during the day, but the drawbacks might take longer to manifest.
So we talked to our daughter this week, and she's been working from home for 10 years now? I can't keep up with it.
It's 8 or at least 8, yeah.
So she gets up in the morning, and she'll start work on her computer. Then she'll wake her kid up and get her kid to school. Then she'll go to the gym. Then she'll go to Starbucks. Then she'll come back to the house and work and finish her work.
And then she go walk the dogs.
Then she goes and walks the dogs, and she listens to podcasts. Like if she has to be on a meeting, she puts her headset on and walks the dogs while she's in the meeting on her headset. And so she gets all these things done all day long, and then they have time to still go do stuff at night because she gets everything done so easily.
She's also a personal trainer, so she works. She works a client in the middle of her day.
And at the end of her day.
Yeah.
Then she picks her kid up from school, and then they go do something fun.
And as long as she gets all of her assigned duties done, they don't really care.
They don't track any of it anymore. They tried for a while, and they just threw their hands up in the air because it was too difficult to try to track what somebody was doing on their computer.
And they call that micro shifting.
Yeah.
I believe was the last article we didn't get around to talking about today, but maybe we'll get to it next week. But it's about reprioritizing your day. If your bosses will let you work from home.
But
go ahead.
She enjoys it so much. It's changed her life.
I think some people like Shelby are wired for that. I worked from home a decent bit in my prior gig prior to coming here, and it's for me it's not very fulfilling. You know, you're at the same place all day, not around people. You might have a a video conference with somebody or a phone call. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like, man, I didn't feel like I had done a whole
You
lot.
had no engagement, personal
Correct.
engagement.
And I need engagement to feel a little bit more fulfilled.
Me too.
So
That's right.
Me
Same
too.
here.
work from home is not for me.
Yep.
All right, everybody, have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management. As financial advisors, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, please contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. You can learn more about them by visiting their website, retirerelax.com. And if you have a question or a topic that you would like them to cover in next week's broadcast, you can email Randy at rfmoney.com. They look forward to connecting with you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.